October 23rd Finance Committee meeting. With us this evening, committee members present, President Kuchmarek, Councilors Walsh, Zarella, Boschman, and myself, Councilor Di Natale. Also present, Councilor Squalia and Auditor Brooks. We will start, councilors, with the first two items on the agenda. They go together. We will start with 26618 and 26718. 6618 is an order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Aeronautics Division Design and Permitting Grant in the approximate amount of $33,500 for the purpose of said grant, which is to pay for the design and permitting phase of the airport runway reconstruction project. And 26718, order that there being hereby is transferred the sum of $33,500, same to be charged against a reserve for other municipal purposes, capital expenses, and credited to airport capital, runway design and permitting for the design and permitting phase of the airport runway reconstruction project. I have a letter here from Scott Ellis, manager of the Fitchburg Airport, to the mayor, dated October 5th, 2018. Mayor Di Natale, the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Aeronautics Division has offered the city a grant in the amount of $33,500 to pay for the design and permitting phase of the airport's runway reconstruction project. This award is the state share of the FAA grant accepted last month. The project is funded 90% by the FAA, 5% by the state, and 5% local share. The local share for this phase will be $33,500. On behalf of the commission, I ask that this be placed on the agenda for the next city council meeting on October 16th, 2018. Mr. Ellis, would you like to? Is there anything you'd like to add to that, sir?
No, I just would like to confirm that this is not a new grant. This is just the state share of the grant that was accepted by the city for last month. The 90% funded by the FAA, 5% by the State Department of Transportation Aeronautics Division, and the 5% local share by the city. And I'll entertain any questions you have.
Motion to approve 266 and 267-18.
Second on the motion.
Motion made and seconded to approve 26618 and 26718. Councilor Boschman.
On the motion. I'd like to know if we can ask Mr. Ellis for, he came in front of the council before for certain things about the airport, and we were talking about the story that Paula Stone wrote, or Paula Olin wrote, and you claimed that they said $14 million in revenue. I'm asking for a breakdown. Can you get a breakdown of what the city of Fitchburg gets in that $14 million?
I could ask the Mass Department of Transportation if they can break down their numbers in that manner, but this was done as the $14.8 million affects the region. I don't have numbers as to how much goes to Fitchburg and how much goes to Leominster and how much goes to Lunenburg. The airport is Fitchburg Airport, but it is a regional asset. So, and the economic health of Fitchburg and the economic health of Leominster and the economic health of Lunenburg are connected. So those numbers were not broken down by municipality.
Well, the reason why I'm asking that, if we're paying the whole freight here, and other communities are benefiting more than what Fitchburg is, why are we paying as a community? Why aren't we? They all tying in and sharing the expense. I mean, really, that's all we're doing here is pay, pay, pay. That's it. That's it. I already know how I'm voting on this one.
I have a motion made and seconded to approve 26618 and 26718. Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? One in opposition. Council Boschman. Passes 4-1. Thank you. Next, we go to 26818, an order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from the Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs grant in the approximate amount of $27,976 for the purpose of said grant, which is to purchase community policing equipment, portable radios, and tactical equipment, as well as support community policing mobilizations. I have a letter here from Chief Martineau to the mayor on October 5th. Dear Honorable Mayor, the Fitchburg Police Department has received an allocation of funds totaling $27,976 from the Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs. These awarded monies are intended to purchase community policing equipment, portable radios, tactical equipment, as well as support community policing mobilizations. I request your approval to start spending these funds from this award to benefit both our department and the city of Fitchburg. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Chief Martin, anything you'd like to add?
Sure, thank you, Council. Good evening, Councilors. The JAG grant is a non-competitive grant. It's a reoccurring grant solicitation. The formula is based on the city's population and its crime statistics. That's how they come up with the calculation of the amount of the award. Historically, it's been between $27,000 and $35,000 a year. This year, we're requesting use the funds to purchase additional portable radios for our police officers. We're always trying to upgrade our portable radios. They're roughly $3,000 a piece, and you can imagine 80 police officers. So we nick away at it, bits and pieces, utilizing grants like this. So we're going to be purchasing portable radios. In addition, this year, we'd like to purchase 10 RAD suits for our police instructors. For those that don't know, RAD is a rape aggression defense system that we have several officers that teach out in the community. And with these funds, we'll be purchasing 10 suits so we can expand our RAD program. Additionally, we would look to purchase 3 ballistic shields to upgrade our ballistic shields in our cruisers. Each frontline cruiser is outfitted with 1 ballistic shield, and ballistic shields have roughly a 5-year shelf life period. So this year, we're trying to replace 3 of those shields. And finally, whatever's left over in this, I think it's around $5,000 that will go towards having police officers in community-related events, similar that we do with our downtown events, where we can utilize more officers in the community involvement. So that's how we're planning on spending the JAG appropriation this year upon your approval tonight. And I'd be happy to answer any questions in regards to JAG.
Council Walsh.
I just want to commend the police department. There are 3 petitions on here for 3 grants for a total of about $100,000, and I just think that you're very active in seeking out grant monies and using those to better the protection for the community, and I just want to thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Council Squalia.
The RAD suits, your 10 RAD suits, how many, was that for one class, or is that for 2 simultaneous classes?
It's
or-
for one. I would have to rely on the experts. Officer Hurdle is one of my primary RAD instructors, and I believe it's for one class. Currently, we've been borrowing suits from Fitchburg State, and we wanted to be self-sustainable, so that's why we're looking to purchase those 10. But we've had great success with our RAD program throughout the years. In fact, we expanded it into the schools where we're doing RAD for kids up at Crocker School. So it's really a very popular program, and the use of these funds will go a long way in making it a more sustainable project throughout the years.
Have you offered a community program that you just open up to the general community for like a series of classes? Is that how it works?
We have in the past, and we're looking forward to continuing, and now having these 10 suits, we're not at the mercy of another agency borrowing theirs. So hopefully, with the purchase of these suits, we have more opportunities throughout the year to have more classes. But if anybody's ever sat in one of the classes, they're very empowering. So it's something we look forward to that we can expand upon with the purchases of this equipment.
Yeah, I could take it. Thanks.
You're welcome.
President Kuchmarek.
Chief, with regards to the radio, new portable radios, are those the ones that make use of the microwave emitter towers throughout the city, or is this a different system?
It's a different, well, there's 2 different systems. The microwave system is the system that the fire department's on. I'm in conversation currently with Chief Roy about bringing us all onto the microwave. Currently, we use an antenna system, but whether with the microwave or the antenna, this new radio systems will work with both. The new radios are a multi-function radio system, which allows us to communicate with other agencies in our area, Lunenburg, Leominster Police Department. So it's upgrading our radio system that we have greater communication with other agencies in case there's a large event.
Great. And how many more would we need to upgrade for the entire?
We're doing well. We've been buying through grants, and I'm proud to say we haven't used any taxpayer money, but through grants, we've been purchasing probably six or 7 per year. We've probably replaced a good 30 or 40 of our, I hate to say, our older models are only 10. That's how frequent technology's turning over. So we're replacing like 10-year-old radios. I would say we're about over a third of the way there. So we're in a good spot, and we're going to continue going after these solicitations to try to save the taxpayers' money and utilize someone else's funds.
And these, the older models will still work. With the newer models, there won't be any communication gap.
Exactly. I mean, there won't be any communication gap.
Wonderful. Well, Chief, thank you for your efforts. I think it's important, along with the fleet of cruisers, it's important to always keep up with the equipment. We never want to be in a situation where we're using, gear past its reasonable life expectancy.
Thank you.
Motion to approve 26818.
Motion made and seconded to approve 26818. Speaking on the motion, Counsel Boishman.
I got a question for the
Yep.
chief. It may not have anything to do with this, but I gotta ask you a question anyway. You know how you watch the news every night in different cities like Boston, LA, New York? They're all coming out with body cameras. Is the city planning on doing that on any of these grants?
Point of order, Mr. Chair, that's
I'm just asking a question. He doesn't have to answer if you don't want. I just thought I asked.
I don't mind answering. I'd be happy to discuss body cameras with any city councilor if you want to come in and see me at any time. That's a lengthy conversation. There's a lot to it. I'd be happy if you want to come anytime. I'd be more than willing to give you my view on body cameras and what it would take to happen here in the city.
All right, thanks. Thank you. That's all I wanted to ask, sir. No big issue.
Motion made and seconded to approve 26818. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. We move to 26918, in order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from the Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, Stop School Violence, Category 5 grant, in the approximate amount of $57,364 for the purpose of said grant, which is to support individualized physical security assessments and trainings for each Fitchburg public school. Letter here from Chief Martineau to the mayor on October 5th. Dear Honorable Mayor, the Fitchburg Police Department has received an allocation of funds totaling $57,364 from the Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs. These awarded monies are intended to fund individualized physical security assessments for each school in the Fitchburg Public School District, as well as physical security assessment trainings and debriefings for both school personnel and law enforcement school resource officers/supervisors. I request your approval to start spending funds from this award to benefit both our department and the City of Fitchburg. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Chief Martineau, anything you'd like to add?
Yes, I would. Council Walsh mentioned it briefly a few minutes ago. These next two awards that you're going to be hearing me speaking about, these were extremely competitive grants. The one we're speaking about specifically here, the award for $57,364. This is a no local cash match. There's no match at all in the city. This is $57,000 that we've been awarded by the Bureau of Justice. Only 13 of these awards were given out across the nation, and for the City of Fitchburg to receive one of 13 speaks volumes of my primary grant writer, Christy Fisher, and we're very fortunate to have her. Currently, we're managing almost $900,000 in grants. That's $900,000 that taxpayers don't have to come up with funds. Unfortunately, we have to talk about school violence, school prevention, and we have to be very proactive when it comes to how we make sure that our children are safe in our schools. The funds for this specific grant will be used to solicit development and training opportunities related to safety for both law enforcement and school personnel. Under this specific grant, we're going to be contracting with a professional to evaluate each and every one of our schools in the district by a professional that's going to come out and make recommendations and give us physical assessments on each and every one of our schools and come up with a plan. These vendors travel around the country and they're specific, targeted towards school and school prevention, violence prevention. And what we get from them is going to go a long way on our next steps in our city. This is an expensive juncture to take, but we felt it was extremely necessary. And fortunately, with the assistance of this grant, we're able to do it. Additionally, this grant's going to cover us having monthly meetings with our school resource officers and our school administration, discussing physical security and assessment situations at all 9 buildings in the district. This is part one of a part 3-4 phase that we've had planned with the school department. Part 3 and 4 haven't come to fruition yet, but we're hoping they do very shortly, and we'll be in front of this group again with some further news. But this is the first step in the process. This is going to give us the opportunity to bring in professionals and tell us what our next steps are. But in addition to this, we're going to be able to send a couple of police officers for advanced training on physical assessment. So at some point, we're going to be able to sustain these assessments within our own agency where we won't have to rely on outside training. So it's my plan to send 2 police officers with this grant money to that next stage where they will be actually able to go out and to assess and professionally make recommendations to districts. So that's how we're planning on spending this $57,000.
Chief, how many resource officers do we have in the district?
Currently, I have a full-time officer assigned to Fitchburg High School. I have a full-time officer assigned to here, Memorial. I have a full-time officer assigned to Longjo. I have one that is assigned to Monty Tech, which is paid for by the Monty Tech District. And I am in communication with the mayor now. It's my intention to put a full-time officer within our elementary schools starting in January, and those are discussions I'm having with the mayor's office currently.
Okay, and my other question is, recently there was a news report on the state appropriating surplus funds. The House and the Senate passed appropriations, and some of that money was earmarked towards school safety. Do you have any knowledge right now if any of that money is coming our way to supplement this federal grant we received?
It's in the infancy stages. It was
Yep.
over $7 million, I believe,
Right.
that the price tag was. Like I said, we're in constant communication with Mr. Jokler and his team. Mr. Jokler understands about the necessity of creating a safe and secure learning environment for all of our children. I know there's talk about going after some of that funding as well. Those are funds that the school department's going to have to solicit for. These are specific to law enforcement. We're the fiscal agent on these grants, working in conjunction with the school department, but I know there's an intention to go after additional funding through the state releasing
I
money
want
as
to
well.
thank your grant writer, Ms. Fisher, on securing this. I mean, again, to emphasize, 13 cities and towns out of the entire United States. So this is something to really, drive home about the work that she did in putting this together, and we're able to secure those funds. And I think that I would like to believe that we're ahead of the game on many school districts in terms of adequately staffing to the best we can resource officers in most of our schools. I read an article a few weeks ago about how there are districts and cities and towns that are struggling right now just to put 1 or 2 in one of the school buildings. It seems like it needs to be pointed out that you've already got coverage in, 3 major schools, with a 4th on the way with rotation. So I almost feels like we're ahead of the game here in terms of having resource officers within our school buildings. So I really encourage you to pursue that discussion with the mayor in January to have another one placed in our elementary schools. I think it's paramount, and anything the city can do to assist in that, I hope he understands. I know he understands. I know we do. You can't put a price tag on school safety with our children. So, anything that we can do to help in that regard, I know the mayor has our ear, but I'm sure this committee in the future wouldn't even bat an eye to approve any funding that is required to make that a reality. With that said, I'll go on to the list here. Counselor Squalia was first.
The 57,000 for the safety study for all of her schools, is that enough money to cover a full comprehensive study for every school in the city of Fitchburg?
It is. When we looked at this grant, obviously, we're going to have to go through our procurement department because there are several vendors that we can choose from. And we did a preliminary, in one specific vendor that I spoke to, it's called Blue Line Info. And we were getting estimates that it would be somewhere in the $20,000 to $25,000 range for the entire district.
Really?
Yeah, so you can understand the importance about part of this grant where I'm actually trying to send a couple of my police officers. So thinking about sustainability down the road, 3-5 years from now, we'll be able to do that study ourselves, and we won't be reliant on a grant to spend $25,000 for continued security assessments in our district schools. So a large portion of this $57,000 will cover that initial security threat assessment on our 9 district buildings.
Like a baseline assessment that we can use to use as a future baseline?
And the second part of it is for me to train 2 of my personnel in the advancement of it, so later on we can be sustainable doing it ourselves with someone that has the credentials that can give us a validated threat assessment at our districts.
And then we'll be able to take that study and know where we're lacking or where we might need to apply for more grants to be able to boost our security.
Once those studies come through, they're gonna be making recommendations that, obviously, with recommendations comes funding. But then we're gonna have a better idea of where we need to go. And, we're continuing to look for other grant opportunities. Like I said, you're seeing phase 1 and 2 tonight. We're already working on phase 3, 4, and 5 in anticipation that these are gonna be passed tonight. We're gonna pass these physical assessments. We're gonna train our personnel, and then we're ready to talk about phase 3, 4, and 5 and how we get there.
Thank you.
President Kuchmarek.
Chief, I think this is wonderful, and we're fortunate that the federal government is giving us funds in order to be able to do these assessments. Is there no statewide agency through the or state police area that actually works with local municipalities on threat assessments? I just think that in this day and age, of kind of continued school violence, I'd expect that the state would be doing, much more systematic assessments with municipalities.
It's a great question, and unfortunately, in the last 5 to 10 years, it's become big business. And you have a lot of professionals retiring from law enforcement that are going into a second career and utilizing their skills, and you're seeing these companies pop up that are legitimate security assessment personnel. And it's really, this has become the birth out of some of the tragedies that happen across the country, and some of your greatest advice and the best advice when it comes to physical and security threat assessments are coming from these private vendors. We could reach out to other agencies across the state, but it doesn't bring with them the legitimacy that's going to come from one of these vendors to say, this is what needs to be done in your district, A, B, C, and D.
Sure.
So I hope that answered your question.
Oh, it does. And then to build off of Councilor Di Natale's point about receiving this, being one of so few communities receiving this throughout the nation, did they give any feedback as to what it is that differentiated us from other municipalities that applied for this grant?
Honestly, I think we're just so fortunate to have the skills of Christy.
Sure.
She looks at the solicitations, and her solicitation responses are very on point and specific. I brag about her all the time, and no one's stealing her. So, I think she does that great of a job being specific on the solicitations.
So I know grant writing is a very particular skill, and there is no doubt that her skill has helped us acquire a number of these grants. But I think you're also selling yourself and your department short in that I think success breeds success. And I think there's a reason that we're getting almost $900,000 in grant funding, and it seems to far outpace most other municipalities our size, and I think that's because of the work that you've done. Organizations don't want to fund, failing departments or failing organizations or failing cities. They want to fund ones that are innovative in their approach and showing continuous track records for improvement. You've clearly done that. Every year it seems that the grant funding continues to grow in an area where funding continues to dwindle from state and federal areas. So, Chief, really hats off, of course, to Ms. Fisher, but to you and your entire department.
Thank you, Council.
Council Boschman.
I'll ask the chief after my question.
Okay.
All right?
That's fine.
Motion to approve 26918.
Motion made and seconded to approve 26918. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Moving to 27018, order that the City of Fitchburg approves the expenditure of funds from the Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, Stop School Violence, Category 5 grant in the approximate amount of $13,300 for the purpose of said grant, which is to purchase and manage anonymous tip reporting software. Councilors, I just want to ask if there could be a motion made to amend this to read Chapter 7 grant, not Chapter 5.
So move.
Motion made and seconded to amend 27018 to read Category 7 grant. All those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Opposed? It is amended. Okay, Chief Martin, would you like to speak?
Sure, absolutely. This award for $13,300. Once again, this is a no local match required on the city's behalf. This specific grant under Category 7, there was 22 awards made nationally. Once again, this was an extremely competitive grant, and it had to be very specifically written, which Christie was able to do. Year and a half ago, we constantly attending vendor shows and seeing, you know, what the next best thing is we can bring back to our communities. And, you know, one of the most important things with schools and stopping violence is having your student body on board and having your student body working with you. And one of the hardest things to have is have your students tell either teacher or SRO something specific that's going on. So we saw this software where it's an anonymous tipping app that a student can either utilize with their cell phone, their computer. There's different ways that they can get onto this application. And if they see something, we're asking them to say something. They can do it anonymously. You know, this $13,000, once again, we're going to have to work through procurement because there's 3 or 4 different companies that offer this type of software. But we see the potential of providing this type of application to our student body where, you know, if they see something, they don't have to fear about reaching out to police or reaching out to the school department where, you know, if something may just be a little bit off to a student regarding the health and welfare of their specific school, we want them to be able to communicate with us. And this is an opportunity for them to communicate. A couple of tragedies have happened across this country in school violence. They've had this app, you know, and information they were already tracking. Unfortunately, it didn't prevent it, but they had some idea of what was going on. I see a lot of value in this because it gives some voice and legitimacy to all of our students where they can reach out to someone of authority without fear of being scrutinized or criticized by their peers. And it gives them an opportunity, gives them a voice without actually saying who they are. This $13,000 will allow us to utilize this app for a couple of years. Will help us train it, will help us monitor it, because obviously you need someone that's going to be monitoring the incoming tips. So we're really excited about this. I think it has great potential. And this $13,000 will allow us to do it for a couple of years to evaluate the program and see if it's something we want to do on a long-term basis.
Chief, would that long-term basis therefore require? That would require at that time city funding to have that be a long-term basis?
That would be my last resort. Once again, I'd continue looking for the
Yeah.
next available grant.
Council Squalia.
So this is a separate app, like a smartphone app that a student in schools can download on their phone? So this would be in middle school or high school?
I can see elementary schools, kids using it.
Soon, yeah.
I mean, yeah, cell phones are available to a wide age of children today. You know, we would make this app available to parents, you know, citywide. I mean, I see it an opportunity giving voice to a larger population that may be a little bit hesitant to reach out to either a teacher or a law enforcement person or someone that just may have some information, and it can remain anonymous. We'd like to know what's going on. If we can get into it before something turns tragic, then good for us. And this is just an opportunity to give voice to someone that may not want to express their voice.
Yeah, that was my bigger question is, can we take this from the school to a citywide usage?
We may. Like I said, this small amount of $13,000 will give us a couple of years to evaluate it. Here's another area where, once I have my 2 officers trained in security and threat assessments, we may determine that there's a better need for that $13,000. So, you know, we're going to be learning as we go. We're always looking for the best tool to take out of the toolbox. Right now, from what I've seen at different vendor shows and talking to other chiefs, this is a great application for short money. So, you know, pending approval of this body, I look forward to trying it for a couple of years, working with the school department, and just providing another opportunity to make sure our kids are safe.
Yeah, I hear from city residents that, you know, sometimes they don't want to call the police because you have to leave your name and number. And, you know, you don't have to leave your name and number to the police department, but they feel pressured or they feel like they need to. So an anonymous tip reporting app would be helpful.
We don't pressure anybody to leave their name and information. It's very helpful because it goes to the velocity of that call. So we encourage people to, you know, if they would like to leave their name. But when you're talking children, high school age, junior high school, there's another avenue there where peer pressure and just, you know, the pressure going to school every day. And this may give that one child that knows something the opportunity to say something without fear of retribution from his peers in school or her peers in school. So I think the potential's there for this application, where it's, you know, it's grant money and it's not costing our taxpayers anything. I say let's try it for a couple of years, and you know, if we could intervene on one situation, then it was well worth the effort.
And just the logistics, if you could also add it to the city website as a portal, so you don't need a smartphone and to download the app. You could do it right from the website?
We could. Like I said, once we have approval, then we'll start soliciting vendors, working with our procurement department and deciding on which vendor we'd like to go with, similar to the other grant that I just spoke of.
And just one more question. After the few years that this funding will fund the app, if we decide we like it, what is the approximate yearly cost to maintain this app?
I wrote that down. Around $5,500 a year.
Thank you.
And that's today's prices.
Make a motion, we accept 270-18.
Second. Motion made and seconded to accept 270-18. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
I'd like to thank the body for the continued
very much,
support.
Chief.
Thank you. Last on the agenda, 273-18, Mark Dohan, Executive Director, Newview Communities, for the City of Fitchburg to include in its annual budget a line item requiring payment to mass development of an amount equal to 15% of any economic benefit to the municipality derived from the redevelopment of land at 62 Academy Street, formerly B.F. Brown School, as further detailed in the petition. I have a letter here, October 10th, from Mr. Dohan. Dear President Kuchmarek, Newview Communities has started our work to replace the roof of the B.F. Brown building. We are making substantial progress, and we expect to have the roof on before winter. I write today because as part of our due diligence, we conducted a Phase 1 environmental survey of the building. During that survey, our environmental consultant, ESS Group, discovered some potential contamination on the site. These items were discovered both in the school building and in the stables. Our environmental consultant recommended that we complete a Phase 2 study so that we can determine whether these materials are hazardous and develop a plan to remove them if they are hazardous. We have requested $20,000 from Mass Development in the form of a recoverable grant. Mass Development has approved our application pending an affirmative vote from the Fitchburg City Council. This funding is an integral part of the plan to create the Fitchburg Arts Community at the site of the former B.F. Brown School. The attached is the form of vote which provides that the city will set aside a portion, 15%, of the increase in tax collections that it receives, if any, to pay back the grant for up to 30 years. If there is no increase in tax revenues, the funding does not need to be repaid. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me. And I will just read the addendum to this, going down to where it says now therefore. The City Council votes as follows. Beginning in the fiscal year when any economic benefit to the municipality is realized, the City of Fitchburg shall include in its annual budget a line item requiring payment to Mass Development of an amount equal to 15% of any economic benefit to the municipality until the earlier of 1, full repayment of the amount of the recoverable grant that has been dispersed and has not already been repaid to Mass Development, 2, the expiration of 30 years from the date on which the first economic benefit to the municipality is realized, or 3, if no redevelopment on the site commences, the expiration of 30 years from the date of the recoverable grant. For the purposes of this vote, economic benefit to the municipality means any increase in the annual property tax and/or other municipal revenues for the site, included but not limited to nonprofit pilot revenue, local hotel or restaurant tax revenue, and new local revenues derived from municipally owned redevelopment projects, attributed to development of the property above the baseline value of the property. Baseline value means the amount of property tax and related tax revenue assessed by the City of Fitchburg on the site in the fiscal year of the execution of the agreement governing the recoverable grant, such amount having been calculated by the municipality and determined to be, and it's $105 is the baseline. Respectfully submitted, Mark Dohan, Executive Director of Newview Communities. I have with us this evening Community Development Director Tom Skorsky, Chief of Staff to the Mayor's Office, A.J. Trigny, and
I'm Steve Cook with Newview Communities. I'm the Director of Housing Development.
thank you, Mr. Cook. I open it up to you gentlemen to provide any other insight on this beyond the letter, if you wish.
Sure. The chief is a tough act to follow, as he just came in front of you with all kinds of great grant opportunities that, you know, Christie and his department's really fantastic on getting resources into the city. Obviously, we're coming in front of you today having a different discussion. This Mass Development Brownfields Redevelopment Fund is really a first step in getting mass development to support the BF Brown project. And it's also another critical moment for us as a city in remediating some of our brownfield liabilities, of which we have quite a few in the city, and I'll probably be coming in front of the city council to ask for more similar type grants in the future. This is a recoverable grant over time. Again, that 15% fee is really nominal in comparison to the benefit that we'll be seeking from this project in the long run. And although New View is really applying, and they submitted the petition on behalf of Mark Doan, this is really a partnership effort. The mayor's office, the community development department, as well as New View and our whole TDI partnership, we're all committed to making sure that we redevelop the Fitchburg arts community, and this is the city's effort in saying we're in this together and we're supporting New View in this effort.
So this is so New View applied to Mass Development for this grant. Mass Development has accepted the application pending our vote tonight,
Correct.
That's correct.
because it's basically, they're not gonna, they wanna make sure that they're gonna get reimbursed for this.
It's a tool that Mass Development's created for a new municipality to participate with a private developer in old buildings and such.
So the 15%, so just as an example, just for the public's knowledge, so let's say after the project is finished, we get $100,000 in added tax revenue from the site based on the increased assessment. This would then require the city to provide New View $15,000 of that $100,000 increase towards the repayment of this recoverable grant
Until the 20%.
until we get to the $20,000.
Correct.
And it's the annual increase, so it, if the increase was $3,000 in the year, the city would pay 15% of that $3,000.
Okay.
Each year.
So whatever benefit we get, 15% would go into this fund to pay back the recoverable grant
Right.
until we get to 20.
Right, and it's the annual increase in taxes paid, it's not the assessed value or
Okay.
anything like that, it's the actual taxes that we're paying to the city, the annual payment.
Okay, so it's the annual.
And the increase in that.
The
not-
increase in
Not
that.
the, if the tax, for an example, if the tax bill on the property was $8,000 a year, it would be the increase in, the annual increase is what I understand.
So right now, we have an assessed value of the property with an amount of taxes that is paid. Once the property is fully finished and developed, there'll be another assessment, and there'll be obviously a jump in tax revenue in that first year after the development is finished. That's when the clock would start, right, with the 15%?
Yes.
We would, so the increase between year one and year two, 15% of that increase would go to New View. And then in year two to year three, if there's another increase beyond the prior year, that 15% of that increase. So it's not the whole amount we're taxing them on, it's just the incremental increases every year. After the first year, well, obviously, there's gonna be a big jump from not developed to developed, which I would hope would cover a good chunk of the 20,000 right off the bat. Maybe, maybe not, but it would be a lot more than the subsequent years
Right.
when it would fluctuate
Depending.
nominally depending on the market forces. So, and then once we hit the 20,000, our obligation goes away. And do you anticipate for phase two? Well, this is to pay for phase two.
Right, so phase two is really to assess the extent of the contamination, then the following phase would look into remediation.
So would we also be applying for a mass development recoverable grant for remediation?
There's a chance that we would, depending on, what the phase two shows us,
Yes, and if it shows that we have to remove the material and we apply for remediation, will there also be a similar type of order coming before us to once again allocate to New View over a maximum of 30 years, that increase of 15% of the increase to pay back that recoverable grant? Is that a fair?
That is likely,
Okay.
right. And again, we've pursued other alternative measures, and we always do when we're looking at brownfields. Grants are not pursuable in this case because of the former owner.
Correct.
Being ourselves.
So if we see an immediate increase in year one of $10,000, we give Newview $1,500. If the following year, the increase is only $12,000, they only get 15% of that $2,000 differential between year one and year two? Or is it off the $12,000?
I would believe it's off the 12,000.
It's off the $12,000.
And it goes to mass development,
Okay.
not Newview.
Correct.
Okay, it goes directly to Mass Development. I thought maybe it goes to Newview, who then gives it, okay,
No,
got it.
goes directly.
Okay,
I think you're wrong.
clear. Okay.
I think you're wrong on that. I really think you're
Anyway,
wrong.
Council Bosch, you know the floor. Council Zarella, you were first.
Honestly, this seems like a really, the terms aren't necessarily simple, but the overall vote that we need to take tonight seems incredibly simple to me. Not only is this something that we have to do for this project to go forward, which is a major component of our future downtown development, but also we're only being obligated to pay a percentage of added revenue that we only get if we do this in the first place. So, in other words, we're not actually paying out any money that we already have. We're simply saying, if we make money off of this, we pay back 15% until we've paid this down. We're still up 85%. This is, to me, the very definition of a no-brainer. There's no risk to the city, because if we don't get extra money, this still expires after 30 years. We're not on the hook for anything except a percentage of actual gains. What is there to vote against?
There's another viewpoint to this that I see, and that is, we've owned that property for as far as I can recall. It is fair to assume, to assess that this material, hazardous or not, was present before Newview bought the property. So I only think it's fair on the city's part that we are the ones that pay back this recoverable grant, since it was there well before the buyers took it over. I mean, we can't allow it to stay there, and I don't think it's fair that Newview incurs the full cost. I've read up on recoverable grants for remediation. This is standard throughout the Commonwealth. As Council Zarella said, we make out 85% of what we gain, and then after it's gone, we get the full 100%. So it's not as if we're getting the short end of the stick on this. We take care of some environmental issues if there are those that exist, and I would like to believe it's on us that was there well before we sold the property, and they wouldn't know that until they started doing these assessments. Someone could say buyer beware, but I mean, it's a nominal amount for the gain that we're gonna get from this project in total, based on the numbers that we've seen. President Kuchmarek.
Mr. Skrowski, you mentioned other brownfield recovery and remediation funding that typically exists, and I'm thinking of the pool of funds that are typically available through the Redevelopment Authority. So in this case, this project is ineligible to receive funding through the FRA Brownfield Act,
Right.
Brownfield funding.
So to Councilor Di Natale's point, given the prior owner of the property, that made us ineligible. And those grants are primarily for phase 1 and phase 2, so sort of assessment-related work. If I were to come in front of council for a future grant looking at remediation, which is, phase 3 and beyond, that also would be ineligible. So there is a pool of funds that are EPA, but they're just for phase 1 and phase 2, and we can't be the prior owner.
Understood. So yeah, I look at this as, without reiterating everything that Councilor Zarella and Chairman Di Natale stated of, I think this is a win-win, because we're only paying if the value increases. So we stand to lose nothing here and gain everything. Not to mention, even if nothing were to happen with this property, we don't want to leave city property next to a park contaminated for future generations. That's not good business. It's not good land ownership. And I think at this point, given the fact that we were the previous owner of that property, it's only right that we clean it up. And it's not like this is a, we stand to gain over New View, or New View stands to gain over us. This is they're truly partners in this project, and we both stand to mutually gain. And in fact, I would say that, the only real winner in this is Fitchburg, the downtown, and the residents of Fitchburg, for this project to be a success. So I think this is a no-brainer. You're asking for us to give nothing more than we have now, and at best, there's a tremendous increase in the assessed value. At worst, the project doesn't move forward, and we don't pay back the funds. So I don't see a loss scenario here. So you have my approval.
Councilor Squalia.
So this is a proposal for the city to partner with New View for remediation of the B.F. Brown Fitchburg Arts Community project. And so this is $20,000 to pay for the Phase 2 environmental. Is that enough to pay for the Phase 2, 20,000?
Yes, yeah.
And from your Phase 1 survey, is there any estimate on the amount of contamination or the cost?
That's why we're doing a phase 2.
Right, so basically Phase 1 examines, yes, there is contamination, then Phase 2 sort of looks in what is the extent.
Right.
And then Phase 3 and beyond, how do we remediate it?
So Phase 1 didn't give you any indication on extent or cost at this point?
No.
And so when we get the results of our Phase 2 survey, and it says there's this much contamination, it's going to cost X to remediate it, and then you're going to come back to the council and request that funding, will it be through the exact same process, through this mass development grant, recoverable grant? This 15%, the same?
Yeah, were that to be the case, yes.
So is there a threshold on, the amount required, the amount that, the recoverable grant, through this 15% process?
The threshold would,
Like if it costs $250,000 to remediate the site, and you come back to the council, is the $250,000 mass development recoverable grant 15% of tax revenue for 30 years?
right, the ceiling for them is $500,000 for any such grant. We're not going to be approaching that, but just to answer your question technically. But yeah, whatever the case would be, we'd still be following the same criteria, 15% of the economic benefit for a period of 30 years or until the grant's repaid, whichever comes first.
So we won't, so in your estimate from the Phase 1 survey, we won't be anywhere near $500,000?
I didn't do the phase, but
We'll find out after the phase 2. How does that sound?
All right, thank you.
Councilor Brochman.
I got two questions. I got one for Calvin Brooks, if he doesn't mind answering. Calvin, can you explain something to me? If the assessed value of that property is worth $2.5 million, that's a baseline. I buy a house, and the city's assessing it for $200,000, but I pay $50,000. Why is it that I pay the assessed value for taxes, and yet we're doing, on the $2.5 million assessed value, we're only charging $100?
The way the statute works on property that's sold by the city, which is what the B.F. Brown School was sold by the city to New View, the taxable value, the assessed value used for taxes and figuring out the pro forma tax is the sale price of the property. That's just the way it's written. So we sold that property for $5,000. That's the basis on which taxes were assessed for fiscal 2019. When we get to fiscal 2020, which is the next year, it will be based on whatever the assessed value of that property is. In your situation with buying a house and paying less than market value, I guess I would say, good for you that you're getting a deal on the house. If that reflects the true value of the house, then the following year the assessment would be lowered to reflect that true value. But because it's been taxable right along, there's already been a baseline for evaluating
You're
it.
saying it's a state statute.
Statute says that's how we handle the pro forma on the year of a sale, correct?
Okay, and now my question to Tom is, a few months ago, we had a big argument, and everybody was out here, and the city was awarded from the insurance company $1.6 or $1.8 million. I thought the mayor, when he sat here, said that was gonna go, that $1.6 million, and I agreed to it, was going for the project for the roof and to clean up the property. And now you're coming back to me, or to this council, and saying, we want us to get more money from you, because $20,000 grant, which we're gonna have to pay back, why can't they pay $20,000 out of that $1.6 million?
Sure. So the $1.6 million went to adding on a roof to the building, but also drying out the building. And from the damage done by the weather, it wasn't really a remediation question. And I know in particular some of the issues that are being dealt with at the Fitchburg Arts community are in the stables, which were not damaged by the fire and are somewhat unrelated. And I think taken together, yes, it is $20,000 only. And I would say the same to you in that we are providing that support to New View, who is a committed community partner, who's worked with us for decades in a variety of other fashions. And this is our way to show to both New View and to show to the state that we're in this together and that we're supporting this project and we want to see it out. But the 1.6 and this 20,000 are two unrelated matters in terms of what they sought out to achieve with those funds.
Now, I think we're wrong when you were explaining that to Mark, the president, on the way it is, because the way I understand it, when I was reading this, that on the baseline, if we collect $40,000 the first year, and then the second year, if it goes up to 50, you only pay from the $10,000 that we collected, not from the 50,000. It'll be the $10,000 above and beyond. Not the way I was hearing you say it, that it goes right back to the 12,000.
Well, that would be if the baseline was zero. So I think the question lies in the economic benefit created by this project. What is the baseline that we're measuring that economic benefit? Is it zero, or is it, in this case, 45,000? But you're correct, from that baseline, whatever economic benefit is created, let's say the baseline is 10,000, the economic benefit is 2,000, then we're taxing only that $2,000 increment.
Counsel, if I can ask.
Thank you. Yeah, and help me out, AJ. The baseline, as I understand it, was the taxes we collected this year because the grant's going to be funded this year
Correct.
and spent this year.
Correct.
And I had told Councilor Di Natale 105. Is that the correct number, or was it pennies on there too?
105.05.
So can we just correct that reading to $105.05?
Okay.
And so it's the agreement is based on, that's your baseline, and then it's whatever gain you have from the baseline, which, as I understand it as I understood it, and as Tom was explaining it, that's where you're starting every year, and whatever your gain is from that baseline.
So the baseline is fixed.
Correct. That's why
It's always that is the starting point every year, no matter what the year assesses it at.
Well, that's the baseline for this fiscal year for 105
Right.
and 5 cents.
So
Correct.
Council Boschman's asking if the baseline is 105 and we realize $10,000. The
Okay.
difference between 105 and 10,000, 15% of that goes to mass development.
Right.
His next question is, in year 3, let's say the taxes on it is 15,000.
Yeah.
Is it 15% of the difference between 105 and 15, or is it 10 and 15?
I believe it's 10 and 15, but regardless, it's going to be up to $20,000 in this case.
Understood, but we're just trying to get an understanding of,
Yes.
I guess it plays into how quickly this will get paid back.
And
Correct.
So in year 1, 105 is the start, and let's say we get 10, it's 15% between the 10 and the 105.
So
Year
1,500.
2, if it goes from 10 to 15, it's not 15% of 15 minus 105, it's 15 minus 10. So it'd be 5,000 in year 2, 15% of the 5,000. Or does it revert back to 105?
I think it reverts back to 105.
Is there, how do, I know you said you think, but
I guess the argument there would be that the economic benefit was created, that created value above and beyond that baseline. You might be able to make the argument that whatever the 2.5% Would you like to speak on it?
I'm sorry.
No, it's quite all right.
No, you go back to the 105 every year, it's the total increase from the baseline. The baseline is year one, this fiscal year, so it's, we go back to the 105, and every year, 15% of whatever the taxes are collected over the 105, that's the amount that we.
So it
pay
resets.
As a minimum payment.
Okay.
That's the way to look at it. It's as if you have a student loan, you're on an income repayment plan, and your minimum payment is 15% of your profit over the original assessed, collected taxes of 105.
Thank you very much.
So let me understand this correctly.
Yes.
Fiscal, which fiscal, 1, 2, 3? The first year was 105. Next year, they're all done the project, and the taxes are $40,000, say. Let's use 40,000, so you get 15%
Yep.
of that, from that 105.
40,000 minus 105
It'd be-
times
because-
15 would be like $6,000.
$6,000.
So the third year, the taxes don't go up, they stay at $40,000. So it reverts back?
It's against the 105 again, so it'd be 6,000 again.
Right.
So in 2 years, they'd have 12, they need 8 more. So if that clip continues, 40, 40, 40, mass development we pay back by the third or fourth year,
Right.
max. And then we get the full 40 after that, pending, of course, any other mass development grant that we would get that's recoverable. But you're correct, if let's say it's 40 and it stays flat for a few years, this will be paid off in about 4 years, pending any other recoverable grants. Then after it's paid off, we get the full 100%, not just the 85.
Okay.
We get that 6,000. We don't have to give it away.
So, can I ask Tom S. again a
Yes,
question?
yep.
Tom S., is it fair to say that if we're looking at the stables, because we already know what's in the LB at Brown, because it was told to us before, because they have asbestos in the stables, what is the kind of waste that they have found? Oh, the dirt they have found, is it oil?
It's not a petroleum product, no, from my understanding.
Right, so what they found and what they need to get to do additional testing, so they found electrical transformers, and those typically have oils in them, right? So that's what they found in the Staples building. So that was what really triggered the concern to go from phase 1 to a phase 2. They didn't find anything, there was but there were decommissioned or old electrical transformers that they found.
Now, one final question, because I want to make sure I understand it. Tom, we're in phase 2, so we go to phase 3. You have no clue that, are you sure it won't go up to $500,000 on this whole deal? I'm using that number as a
Answer that
ballpark
question.
number.
It's not, I didn't do the phase 1s or phase 2s, I was an outside observer here, but
Phase 2 will determine what phase 3 will cost,
Yeah,
at which point we will have to do another recoverable grant from mass development to
I
pay for
understand
it.
that.
And there'll be a similar type order in that future point, whether it's 15%, is it 15% the fixed number? Or
Yes,
is it-
through
okay,
mass
so
development, yeah.
15% is the mass development number. Let's say it's 500,000.
Yeah,
It costs $500,000. We'd have to pay back the 500,000 over 30 years at the 15%. So,
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Point of order. At this point, we're talking about hypotheticals. We're talking about approving phase 2, which will help us determine every subsequent phase. So I'm curious why, we've had multiple people asking about future steps. That's the point of this. It'll determine the course of
Mr.
action.
President,
from that point
I
forward.
understand your point of order. I think it's a relevant conversation because if phase 3 occurs, I think it's pertinent on our part to just warn the public that this is what will happen if that happens. Everyone's acknowledging we're hypothetical right now. We don't exactly know. But some of us just want to make sure people are aware, so in a year or so, when they come back to us, if they do for more, this isn't like a sticker shock to the public. They have some idea that this is a possibility. I agree with you, we shouldn't go down the nuts and bolts of, 6,000 here, 5,000 here, but the central point of the questioning is, if there is a phase 3, whatever that cost may be, this is the maximum we can expect. $500,000 is the max they will allow. 15% of that, I don't want to get into the weeds of what this will cost in terms of what we have to
Don't
pay
do
back.
that.
But the point of the question is, if there is a phase 3 from this phase 2 study, what are we looking at in the future, just so people are prepped for it, in my opinion, just so they're prepped. We should stop it there. I mean, I think Council Squally asked the question, I asked the question, Council, it's been asked and answered. People have an idea. Let's not get into the weeds of the numbers, but.
Motion to approve 27318.
Second.
Motion and second to approve 27318. Speaking on the motion, Council Zarella?
I just want to reiterate, particularly for the viewing public who may be thinking about future grants and whatnot, but also just because it's a theme I want to keep coming back to. This is a grant. It is, in this case, a recoverable grant rather than an outright grant like many of the ones we've voted on in the past year. But it's still a grant. At worst, if we do realize enough, I say at worst, it's actually good for us anyway, but if we do realize enough increased revenue off of this to fully pay back this grant, we're still ahead of the game. We've done better than breaking even. At worst, we're 85% ahead over the next 30 years. At best, we're well over that if we end up realizing additional revenues past that point.
In what scenario we gain minimum of 85%?
Right. There is
100%.
There is no scenario in which this vote tonight costs the city money. It's literally impossible under the terms of the grant. So.
I know Council Bosch may have your hand up because of what Council Zarella has just said. What he is saying is the benefit to the city is right now we're getting nothing.
Right.
If we get 10,000, we got to get 15%. We gain 8,500. We're not
Right.
losing anything from where we started. That's
But I
his
just want to
point.
point out the council,
Yes.
the council on my right.
Yes.
The taxpayer's paying again. That's all I want to say. Whether it be 15% or not, we're still paying again.
We're not paying because the
We
net
got to pay back the 15%.
the net gain is $8,500 a year in that scenario.
All right.
I understand what you're saying, but it's a net gain to the taxpayer. It's not a net loss.
All right.
Thank you. Motion made and seconded to approve 27318. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen.
councilors.
You're welcome. Very good job.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Second.
All those opposed?
Oh, man.
We adjourn. Thank you.